Hey, Brian Briscoe here, and I want to talk to you today about something called momentum. And I think most people understand what the word is. This really comes from a discussion I had with one of the many aspiring investors I talk to week to week. And I was talking about first deal criteria, how to right size your first deal. And incidentally, I released a podcast episode about this a couple months ago. And there's also a blog article on the website that talks more about my thoughts on first deal. And that's at thetribeoftitans.info/blog. You can get that article. I was talking once again about my philosophy on right sizing your first deal. And the person I was talking with responded with the word momentum. You're building your momentum. That's a word that I think has a lot of good, positive, meaning as far as how we're building our multifamily businesses. Instead of working to just get into the biggest property possible, we look at building our momentum and working on that momentum. If you work on building your momentum, everything else should fall into place. For example, I talk with a lot of people and they say, I want to be in the 100 unit plus space. And there are lots of good reasons for that. There's a lot of economies to scale. Once you hit 80, 90, 100 units, you can bring in on-site management and you can manage it better, you can operate it more efficiently. Lots of good reasons to be in that space. But as I've mentioned several times before, there's also a big barrier to entry getting into that space. If you're a brand new aspiring apartment investor and you're trying to purchase a $10 million property, you are very likely going to be competing with a lot of people who have already purchased properties that size or purchased properties close to that size. And when you look at what the brokers and sellers, and when they're looking at the different deals, they are also going to be looking at your credibility, your ability to purchase the property. And if there's comparable offers between a brand new syndication group who's never done anything before and a syndication group who has closed several properties already, they're going to give the nod to the experienced group. And it makes a lot of sense. What I'm talking about momentum is, wherever you want to get to, don't worry about just starting where you want to get, because the amount of momentum that you have to build to get up to there is going to take an incredible amount of time and resources. I think a better way to get to that level, whatever, like I said, whatever level you want to be at. And I got aspirations. I've got a couple of properties in the triple digits that we've been able to close on. And I'm looking for even larger properties. I'm looking for properties that are in the 40, 50, $60 million range. That's where I want to be. And that's where I want to operate. And I want to be able to get there. The approach that I'm taking is the same approach that I recommend for anybody else who wants to play in the big leagues. And that's start small. Start with something that is reasonable for you. And reasonable for you is dependent on you and your capabilities. But I would offer that if you want to get to the point to where you have a portfolio that's chock full of 150 unit apartment complexes, then maybe you start at 30 on your first deal and make that the beginning of your momentum. That's where you start really, really gaining momentum, is when you're able to close on a 30 unit property. And then your second property, you grow from there and you continue to try to push the ball forward to add momentum as you're going. And maybe your second property is a 60, 70, or 80 unit property that you can add on to that. After that, you've got a lot more momentum going. And now when you start trying to tackle a property in the triple digit range, 120 units, you've already got 100 units under your belt. And you have that momentum going forward. You have that momentum with the brokers. The brokers have transacted with you before. You're a known quantity. They know you can close. And your investors have transacted with you. And people have seen you with those successes. People have seen you do what you say you're going to do on a 30 unit. And they've seen you do what you said you're going to do on a 70 or 75 unit property. And you're going to have momentum and credibility with your investor base. You're going to have relationships with lenders. You may have one or two different loans at this point, and you can go back to the same lender or the same broker, and they're going to give you more time because you are a repeat customer. And all of that comes into play when you're trying to get into these larger and larger properties. Instead of trying to just jump right in the deep end and start trying to tread water, do things a little bit more responsibly. Work on the momentum, okay? Work on that first property that's a reasonable first purchase, get into a second property that's a reasonable step up from that first purchase, and keep on growing and building your momentum like that. And before you know it, you're going to be operating exactly where you want to be. All right, that's today's episode, and definitely don't want to discourage anybody from going big, but I want to help people get there faster. And I truly believe that getting there faster means building your momentum and starting at something reasonable and building up. You're going to get there more responsibly and arguably a lot quicker if you start with a reasonable sized property.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.